Now, in continuation to my coverage on the True Dragon siblings of that time I got reincarnated as a slime, I have done videos on both Veldora and Velgrynd respectively, so it's time to go over their older sister Velzard the White Ice Dragon. As usual, in this video we'll be covering Velzard's overall powers and abilities to see just how powerful she actually is along with her character story throughout the series. It goes without saying there will be spoilers for the Tensura series, so here's a spoiler warning just in case. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more breakdowns like this in the future.
漂流のベルザード、氷の女帝が。
あら、私を忘れているなんて相変わらず冷たい人ね。
For starters, let's go over the origins of Velzard the White Ice Dragon. She's the second true dragon that came into existence after her older brother Veldanava, the Star King Dragon, created the main Tensura world. This also makes her the older sister of the Scorch Dragon Velgrynd and the Storm Dragon Veldora Tempest, but she wasn't only the second sister, she is actually the second strongest true dragon as well in terms of overall power and strength, losing only to Veldanava. Aside from that, as it was typical for a true dragon, she is the physical manifestation of ice, a dragon that wields the ultimate mastery over the freezing cold. However, her natural essence has been intentionally kept hidden by Velzard herself. Only Veldanava and the past incarnation of Ramirez knows her true essence. But it was hinted that her essence is associated with the concept of deceleration, meaning her power mostly specializes in stopping kinetic energy and bringing things to a standstill. And thanks to her natural essence, it was almost impossible for Velgrynd and Veldora to defeat her even if they both somehow trained to become stronger than her. That's because Velzard was actually the natural counter to both their kinetic and movement-oriented true dragon essences, so she can easily just defeat them without even needing greater overall power. But moving on for skills and abilities, Velzard has the usual intrinsic skills associated with the true dragon race like Dragon Spirit Haki, a powerful presence surrounding her that is imbued with magical and physical properties. Anything that comes into contact with it will be eroded. Next is Universal Perception, which gives her complete control over all her senses, allowing her to sense things that are far beyond her perception. Then we have Universal Shapeshift, and this essentially allows her to freely change her physical appearance and properties. This was the skill that allows a true dragon to have a human form. For the fourth and last skill, it's called Material Creation, giving her the ability to create physical objects or matter by using magic use. Additionally, Velzard was gifted an ultimate skill from the Virtue series by her brother Veldanava called Patience King Gabriel, giving her the power to fix the status of someone or something. What this basically means is stopping the flow of time of a target, which perfectly complements her innate deceleration nature. This ultimate skill was also considered the second greatest in terms of defense in the Virtue series, losing only to the Castle Guard skill of Justice King Michael. Gabriel itself has 3 known sub-skills: Fixation, which allows her to lock something or someone in a temporal stasis, effectively stopping the target's flow of time. Then there's Eternal World, a world system skill, one of the most powerful forms of skills in the Tensura world, and they basically function like the domain expansion of Jujutsu Kaisen. This allows Velzard to create a domain in which she is able to bring everything within this domain to a complete standstill, locking them in place and nullifying all forms of attacks. The last sub-skill is Space-Time Manipulation, giving her the ability to control space and time, but it also allows her to use the arts known as Time Stop. This ability lets her enter a space called the Suspended World where time is completely frozen and the laws of physics don't fully apply. She also has another art called Snow Crystal, which was created through a combination of a deceleration ability and fixation. It provides her with an absolute barrier that can stop all attacks because it could block all forms of wavelengths and frequencies. However, spiritual attacks are able to penetrate the barrier, but they had to either match or surpass Velzard's own energy output to do so, or using unconventional attacks like Rimru's Predation skill. With that said, despite being insanely strong and having been given an ultimate skill by Veldanava, Velzard always wanted to be praised by her brother. So when Veldanava acknowledged the strength of a newly born demon lord named Guy and gave him the job of stopping the world-destroying dragon Ivarash, Velzard became jealous of the demon lord. She would go on to challenge him in battle out of jealousy, fighting for 3 days and 3 nights. Their battle was so intense that it slightly shifted the polar axis of their world. In the end, their battle was a tie which annoyed Velzard because Guy only had a unique skill at the time, and yet she still couldn't overpower him with her own ultimate skill. And when Guy awakened his own ultimate skill right in front of her, Velzard was forced to admit why Veldanava acknowledged him in the first place, and she decided to become his partner. Thus, that was essentially how they both met, and later they decided to live in the north where the Great Magic Empire used to stand, but because of their battle, the castle became a frozen wasteland covered in permafrost, and with Velzard's draconic energy constantly leaking out, it kept the surroundings in perpetual cold. However, because Guy didn't really mind and thought it served as a good defense against weaklings, Velzard did not have to intentionally restrict her energy output, although her dragon form was too inconvenient for the castle, so she decided to take on a human form, and she actually has 2 forms, an adult form and a younger form. Her adult form allows her to have complete control over her powers, and the restriction on her energy output are fully removed. Her adult form is actually considered her battle form, so she only uses this when she is serious about the battle, like whenever she fights Gi. As for a younger form, her power is more restricted, but it was more energy efficient, and she will have better control over the amount of energy to release to maintain the freezing temperature around the castle. This is the form she maintained throughout her time with Gi, and she thought it would even impress Gi, but he ain't no simp. Now, even though Velzard never showed it, deep down she was actually quite fond of Gi and always wanted to one day win over him with her charms, which will be important later on. They would go on to spend hundreds of years together, and it was then a group of challengers broke through her frozen barrier. They consisted of her sister Velgrynd, her brother's apprentice Rudra, and her sister-in-law Lucia. Rudra apparently wanted to challenge Gi, but their fights never had a real winner, so Velzard along with the girls simply observed and enjoyed their competition while occasionally arguing who was better. However, when the Storm Dragon Veldora was born, Velzard and Velgrynd often got into fights as well over how to educate their destructive younger brother, but it was never a serious fight for Velzard, and she simply stayed in her younger form because even with her powers restricted, it was enough to defeat Velgrynd. As for how Velzard chose to educate Veldora, she always went with a violent approach, destroying Veldora to reset his personality, and after he regenerated, she would give him a gentle lecture. I can see why he is so afraid of both his sisters, especially Velzard. When Veldora was sealed by the hero Chronova, Velzard was quite happy not having to deal with him and decided to leave him there until his magic use dissipated instead of freeing him as a form of punishment. In any case, when Rudra and Gi created their game to determine the winner, Velzard wasn't really that interested, so she simply continued to live her life by Gi's side. And a few hundred years later, a demon lord by the name of Leon Cromwell rose to power and Gi became quite interested in him, even inviting him to the palace of White Ice, the eventual name that was given to the castle they stayed in. They became good friends and Gi always tried to make sexual advances on Leon, which obviously made Velzard jealous, so every time they would meet, their interactions were always quite hostile and passive-aggressive. That said, Velzard later briefly appeared in the anime just before Walpurgis, and she would show herself after hearing Leon's news about Veldora being freed from his prison. However, she did not believe the news at first because normally if Veldora awakens from anything, there will always be chaos across the lands, but this time he was quiet, which surprised her and Gi. So Velzard would use her cognitive ability as a true dragon to search for the presence of her brother, and even though it was faint, she confirmed that he has indeed escaped. She also thought that Veldora has become weakened, not knowing that he simply learned to control his magic use, but I'm sure that after Gi saw Veldora at Walpurgis, he probably told Velzard about her brother when he returned. Now moving on, Velzard will only make her appearance again in the story during the Tempest Federation's war with the Eastern Empire, right after they had just defeated the first Eastern Empire attack. Diablo actually invited Gi to visit Tempest because they wanted to question him about his game with Emperor Rudra, so Velzard decided to follow along and she was later introduced to Rimuru Tempest. She then joined their discussion and she was quite impressed by the confectionery Rimuru offered. I guess being bribed by good food runs in the family. When Veldora and Ramorous interrupted their discussion, Velzard was happy to see her little brother in good health and was still as chaotic as ever. Velzard made Veldora piss himself and she forcefully dragged a very pitiful looking Veldora away to have their usual slow talk. Luckily, Rimuru decided to intervene and help the suffering Veldora from his sister, and he managed to convince Velzard to stop using violence on Veldora, but instead actually talk and listen to him for once. They managed to have a proper conversation in the end, and afterwards Velzard will have a sparring session with Veldora inside the labyrinth, and she was actually impressed at how much she has grown because she could no longer completely dominate him like all their previous encounters. Although I have to mention that she only fought him in her younger form and still easily defeated him, leaving him wounded all over. After a reunion with Veldora, she followed Gi back to their home to observe the outcome of the war between the Tempest Federation and the Eastern Empire. When the Empire was defeated, the Mana Smiter and Phantom King Feltway had revealed themselves, but they were pushed back by Rimuru's forces. However, they would attack Gi's domain afterwards, and Michael used Regalia Dominion to take control of Velzard through the control circuit embedded into a patient's King Gabriel. Now I have to mention that Michael technically doesn't have full control over Velzard. Instead, his Regalia Dominion simply brought out the repressed desires of Velzard to be acknowledged and loved by Gi to the surface. And because one of Michael's plans was to prevent Gi from interfering, it aligned with Velzard's own desires, so she freely accepted the effects of Regalia Dominion. That's why when she was put under Michael's control, she released all her limiters and transformed to an adult battle form to happily fight against her beloved Gi with her full might. But their battle was abruptly ended because Michael ordered her to retreat, and their next destination was the Heavenly Star Palace, the birthplace of Veldanava and Michael's new base of operation. And it seems that Velzard was the only person allowed to open the gates to the Heavenly Star Palace. Maybe that's why their first target was her. Also, because Michael took her dragon factor, she became weakened and had to recover her strength for a few days. When she finally recovered, she was sent to El Dorado, the domain of Leon, another holder of an angelic system ultimate skill with Feltway's forces to capture him. After arriving, Velzard released a burst of magicals to conjure a powerful blizzard, which was able to disrupt the universal perception of people caught in the blizzard, and even nullify the temperature resistance for those that has the natural effects nullification skill, causing them to experience the extreme cold. And because it was dangerous to let Velzard freely rampage, Guy was forced to intercept her to keep her occupied. Thus, a lover's quarrel between the strongest forces in the world was happening while the battlefield is raging on around them. During their fight, I think what impressed me more was the fact that although Velzard was fully powered, Guy could still keep up with her while also having to maintain a barrier to prevent the surroundings from being destroyed, and not to mention that her existence value was around 90 million, which is twice the amount of Guy's own existence value. But regardless, their fight ended up in a stalemate again, and after Michael took control of Leon, Velzard along with Feldway's forces retreated from the battle. Back at the Heavenly Star Palace, Michael appointed Velzard as his advisor, and she was given autonomy to do whatever she wants, but she still had to listen to his orders. Although since her own objective was to simply harass Guy and it aligned with Michael's own plans, he deemed it was easier to just let Velzard move freely on her own. Now, when Michael was defeated by Rimuru, Velzard decided to take action, arriving at Eurozania right after Million and Rimuru's forces had just defeated the Insecta forces of Zelenus. Again, she would create a powerful blizzard to cover the battlefield, but this time, people below the Super Awakened class were all turned into ice sculptures. Luckily, they were not completely dead, instead frozen in a state of suspended animation, and I think it's crazy that she took out most of Milim and Rimuru's forces simply by releasing her magicals. Not to mention that people like Carrion, Frey, Midley, Obera and Carrera, who were all Super Awakened class, were also turning into ice sculptures when they tried attacking Velzard, and that was Velzard's plan all along, having Milim witness all her friends turning into ice sculptures, causing her to lose control and transforming into a true battle form to spread death and destruction across the world, so that Guy has no other choice but to finally face Velzard in an actual fight. Velzard then guided the enraged Milim to the Sorceress Dynasty Sarian so that she can destroy the Sacred Tree and maybe it will unleash the world-destroying dragon Ivaraj once again. Remember, Velzard is doing all this just to get Guy's attention, so not gonna lie, she's really taking the jealous stalker girl to such an extreme level. That said, before reaching Sarian, Velzard was stopped by Guy and the battle was currently happening off-screen while Rimuru was handling the rampaging Milim, and Velzard's story ends here for now, but I think her battle will likely be shown in the upcoming volume of the light novel, so we'll just have to wait and see. Now overall, I don't really like Velzard as a character because of a terrible, cruel and selfish personality, which is quite fitting with a character theme of being an ice princess. Regardless, although I dislike her personality, she's still a very interesting character because of the way the author makes her such a powerful godly individual, and yet she is affected by the simplest of human emotions, giving some good contrast to her character. With that being said, she reminds me of a jealous, crazy yandere, but I have to say, her character design is definitely one of my favorites in the series. And what about you? Do you like Velzard's personality and story throughout the series and also her character design? Feel free to share your thoughts down below.
反応が以前と比べ物にならないほど微弱だわ。でも暴れ出さないのは不思議ね。
Anyways, that's everything on Velzard the White Ice Dragon, and hopefully I managed to give you a new perspective on the character as a whole. Also, what are your thoughts about her, and do you agree or disagree with me on some of my takes regarding her? Feel free to leave your opinions in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video and want more anime content like this in the future, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button to stay up to date with all my content. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe everyone.